Yo guys, it's Slyroh. You already know that today I'm going to be ranking all 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's a lot of tracks to talk about, so I'm going to keep this intro short. While I've played a little bit of Mario Kart over the years, namely Super Mario Kart 64, kind of, Mario Kart Wii, and a little bit of Mario Kart DS, 95% of my Mario Kart memories are with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so I wanted to make this video and rank all of the tracks from worst to best before this game becomes irrelevant and the next Mario Kart comes out. This is all 100 subjective, my opinion based list, taking various factors into consideration, just like the map layout, the music, the design, the atmosphere, all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of just ranking it from what I find the least fun to what I find the most fun. This list will be heavily weighted towards the experiencing 200cc because that is my favorite speed to play on, but I also have the right to keep other speeds in consideration if a track is just really bad on 200cc. That won't just automatically kill a track on the list. Make sure to let me know some of your least favorite and favorite Mario Kart tracks. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and start this list. Starting off the list with a pretty cold take, my least favorite track in the game is Toad's Turnpike. It's a pretty straightforward track with not much to it other than the fact that there's a million other cars on the road at the same time, which do get in the way. You can use the walls to avoid some of it, but honestly I've just never really been all that excited anytime I have to race at this track. So without the gimmick that it has, it would be a really boring track, and because of the gimmick that it has, it's a little bit worse than boring, which is bad enough to make it the worst track in the game, in my opinion. Coming in at number 95 is going to be Sherbet Land. On paper, this track should have a lot going for it, as there's like indoor sections, outdoor sections, underwater sections. It's got a snowy aesthetic, but every time that I've raced on it, I just don't really have fun. I think the track is like too wide and there's not really enough interesting things going on to make it worth it. It's a track that I feel like I've raced on so many times and it just feels so boring every single time that I race on it, and I can't really explain why. But this is a track that I have disliked for a very long time, and so for me it's no surprise that it ended up this low on the list. Coming in at 94 is going to be Rainbow Road. And yes, every single time I say Rainbow Road, I'm going to have to specify which one because there's like 6 of them in this game. But this is the one that was for Mario Kart 8. The space station concept is pretty cool in theory, but in execution, I just don't have that much fun racing on this track. It doesn't feel all that much like a Rainbow Road. It kind of feels like its own thing. And there's a couple of turns that I find nearly impossible to do unless you completely kill all your speed, which, I don't know, is just less fun to me. Maybe this track clicks for other people, but it really just doesn't click for me, so that is why I have it this low on the list. Coming in at 93 is Super Bell Subway. Racing through a subway is a pretty cool concept, but I've always felt that it's just like too cluttered in the underground area, which is like 80% of the race. If you go off the road, you basically lose all your speed with the off-road section, and if you're on the road, there's like a 50% chance that you end up getting hit by a train. That's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but I've just never really found a consistent way to have fun on this track. I feel like, you know, whether it's through items, whether it's just through bad routing, I just end up finding myself on a course where I'm just like slowing down, and in a racing game, I don't like slowing down, I like to go fast, so I don't really have much else to say. I've just never really had that much fun on this track. Coming in at 92 is going to be Shroom Ridge. I still don't really like having other cars on the road, but this one is at least a little bit more unique in terms of the shape of the track, as well as it has a fun shortcut to try for that I usually fail, but it's at least fun to try at the end of each lap. But yeah, just give me more tracks where I don't have other cars to contend with, please. Thanks. Coming in at 91 is going to be Rock Mountain, and I really just don't like how this one looks, honestly. With a name like Rock Mountain, I just assumed that there would be more rocks or more mountain, and like, yes, you do fly down a mountain and then go back up while rocks are being thrown at you, but I'm not entirely sure. Something about the look of this map just really doesn't do it for me. I feel like there's a lot more exciting elements that could have been done here. The only real highlight I have is at the end of each lap when you're going up the mountain and then you kind of boost up and you fly over the finish line. That part I like, but the rest of it is kind of bare bones and a little boring for me. Speaking of bare bones and boring, number 90 is Toad Circuit, and while I do like the giant toad balloon, this racetrack really just does not offer much. I'm not even going to hold it against Toad Circuit that it was a DLC track and not even one of the base game tracks, as there is a time and place for a simple level like this. But even without factoring that, there just really is not that much to do here. The roads are wide, there's not that much visually going on, you're kind of just driving around, each lap is the same, and I don't know, some of the other basic tracks in the game have a lot more, at least visually, going on, or the race is over faster, and Toad Circuit doesn't really have any of that for me. It's kind of boring, and that's why it's this low on the list. Coming in at number 89 is going to be Cheep Cheep Beach. I have never been a fan of beaches, and I don't really like Cheep Cheeps, so mash them together and you get an okay Mario Kart track. I find it hard to pinpoint exactly what it is about this track that I've never really clicked with, but I don't super like the thin strip of beach that you can race on, or maybe go underwater and then run into some crabs, or, there's just always something getting in the way or knocking you off course or something. And this track isn't bad by any means, but it's definitely just one of the ones that's kind of meh to me. Coming in at number 88 is Rosalina's Ice World. This is another snow/ice themed level that I just don't feel is done all of that well. The turns are a little wonky, especially the ones that are like made of ice and you can kind of go up the slope, and it just doesn't feel satisfying to sort of drive around in a sense that it looks like it would be. There's not really that many parts of the level that really stand out to me visually either. It's kind of just like whatever Ice World, and this track just really doesn't do much for me. Coming in at number 87 is Piranha Plant Slide, which used to be my least favorite level in the entire game. I never really liked how cramped the sewer sections felt, especially with the Goombas walking around. It just seemed like you were one wrong move away from bumping into something and losing all of your speed. There's also a pretty sharp turn towards the end of the sewer section that used to really give me trouble. It's not that bad anymore, but once you declare something as your least favorite, it takes a little bit of time to work through that, so consider this just be working through my trauma. Coming in at number 86 is Cheeseland. And as much as I do love cheese, and I find the idea of an entire track made out of cheese to be pretty funny, it turns out that in reality, it doesn't look all that good. Like, visually, this track kind of hurts me to look at. Racing on it is fine. I like the little dips in the road that you can get boosts off of, but there is also a large portion of off-road track that can really kill your speed if you get knocked onto it, either by an item or your own lack of skill. It could probably find itself a few spots higher if it looked better, but honestly, I've never really loved this track. Coming in at number 85 is going to be Koopa Cape, and this track has the opposite problem where visually I think it looks really cool, but it's actually not that much fun to race on. This track is just filled with those ramps that are like half pipes. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but the ones where you go up and the game lets you go up them a little bit as you're going around the side, and then sometimes there's barriers that stop you from going too high, and then there's other ones that it does have a boost at the top, and then you boost on that, and then every time I come down I just feel like I'm always just riding the sideline or like riding up against the rail or something. And to be completely honest, this isn't a track that I have a lot of experience with, but the few times that I've raced on it, I have not really enjoyed it. But I do like it visually. I like the shells everywhere. There's a section at the start where you drive under a waterfall, and then there's a part where you are driving like on water, and stuff like that is pretty fun, and it does look good. I like all the details in the background, but yeah, not my favorite track. Coming in at number 84 is Bone Dry Dunes, which I feel like has a lot going for it aesthetically. And when I look at each part of the course, I can't even nitpick anything that's really that bad about it, but for some reason, it's always been the most forgettable track in my mind. Like, if you ask me to name Mario Kart tracks off the top of my head, this might be the last one that I come up with. And I don't entirely know why, because I've raced on this track a lot, but there's really just no part of it that sticks in my mind, and unfortunately that kind of leaves it here lower on the list as a result. Number 83 is another forgettable one for me, as it is Ice Ice Outpost. I swear I generally do like ice levels in video games, but Mario Kart just has a few tracks that aren't really up my alley. This one sees you having the option to take two different paths that you can kind of switch between at will, because despite the fact that there's like a green side and a yellow side, they kind of intertwine and intermingle, and you kind of are doing the same thing on both no matter what. I don't even really hate this one all that much. It just never really has done anything for me, and again, it's one that I've raced on a lot, and it just doesn't really stand out that much in a positive way, so that's what's going to leave it lower on the list. Coming in at number 82 is Donut Plains 3. This track is pretty inoffensive, and I don't have a lot of beef with it. I don't love how big the off-road section is. Like, if you go off the main path, you're going to lose all your speed, and it can take you a minute to get back on if you went off course in a pretty bad way, which I, have done on occasion. While it is visually a huge upgrade to how it looked like in the Super Nintendo version, it's still nothing all that crazy compared to some of the other tracks in the game. And so without any one big thing to really shoot it up further on the list, it's going to come in this spot of the list. Coming in at number 81 is DK Summit. Okay, maybe I do have a problem racing in the snow. I think the idea of going up a mountain and coming down it is executed better in other stages. I don't love the blue boost at the top of the ramps that make up nearly every turn and ramp in this level. The physics of it is just not my favorite thing to experience, but it's not enough for me to outright hate it. The whole ski lift setting looks cool, and of course you have snowboarding Shy Guys, so I can't hate it too much. Coming in at number 80 is Electrodrome. This level looks amazing, and the music is poppin', but it's really not all that fun to race on. It is basically a basic track that is just extended out. There's not really any fun racing maneuvers being done. It's a lot of just driving forward and doing your drift boosting and whatnot, but there's not a lot of corners, there's not a lot of obstacles, there's not a lot of other variety. Like, racing through it is kind of just like racing through one of the basic tracks, except for it takes a lot longer to get through. So that is why it's not my favorite, but I can appreciate what it's going for. I just wish it was a little bit more interesting with the racing maneuvers, I guess. Coming in at number 79 is Rainbow Road, the N64 version, and I know people have a lot of nostalgia for this one, so hopefully people don't get too mad, but for me, this is a mixture of a track that's just a little bit too short, as well as there's a couple turns, especially towards the end, that always kind of get me. And while I do think that this track looks really good visually, and I like all the effects going on, it is giving very, like, Rainbow Road, probably more than the Space Station one that I talked about earlier. But I don't know, I feel like once upon a time, Rainbow Road used to be this, like, special thing, like, put on a pedestal, but, like, over time, when I just really sit there and think about, like, racing on Rainbow Road, it's really not my favorite thing to do, especially this iteration of it. Coming in at number 78 is Music Park, which has similar issues as Electrodrome, just in the sense that I think it's a really cool concept. I love the jumping music notes and just sort of the music playing. There are a couple of really tricky turns that are basically impossible to do if you don't, like, completely kill all of your speed, and that has led to more than a few frustrating experiences on this track. So as much as I want it to be higher on the list, I just can't put it there in good faith. Coming in at number 77 is going to be Moonview Highway. While this track also has cars on the road, which I generally don't like, there's just a lot less of them on this track. And in the one section where there are a few more cars, the track is so wide that it's, like, pretty hard to consistently be hitting the cars. I think the night setting and driving through the city with the different, toll booths or whatever they're supposed to be, like the little barricades that, like, raise and lower the background, is giving a lot of life and makes it feel like it's a very lived in and busy and hustling and bustling city, which is pretty nice. However, this is also a pretty flat track, and there's not a lot of exciting maneuvers that you can do unless you are ramping off of cars or going on a boost panel, but other than that, you're kind of just driving in a circle, so it's not that complicated, so I will dock it some points for that, but yeah, this is a pretty solid course, but not better than the ones above it. Coming in at number 76 is going to be Wario's Gold Mine, and for some reason this level has never really clicked with me, even though I have raced on it a bunch. It has a pretty unique skybox and coloring to it, as, it takes place more in, like a gold mine. And there are interesting, like, racing maneuvers done to it. You're not just driving on flat ground going straight the whole time. So I definitely feel like it has a lot to offer, but for some reason I just have a lot of negative experiences with this track. I don't know if it's just the amount of times that I've raced on it. I know that the inside of the caves can get a little bit cluttered, especially if items are flying everywhere, maybe that has something to do with it. But this track has just never really excited me, and I don't have a great reason to explain why, but around this spot on the list feels pretty good to me. Coming in at number 75 is going to be Paris Promenade, and I'm going to go ahead and take this time because this is the first city course from Mario Kart Tour that it made its way into the game, and so just to give my thoughts on them as a whole, while I understand the disappointment that can come from having them take up one of the slots instead of a track that you might hold near and dear to your heart, because I didn't really have that same nostalgic value with a lot of older Mario Kart tracks, I wasn't sitting there waiting for a certain track to be remade. So in my mind, if a track is fun, then it's fun, and I've even softened more over time on them because I feel like they have shown that it can be very interesting and fun to race on. That being said, Paris Promenade is not my favorite of them. Despite the many number of times that I've raced on this track, I still find myself turned around every so often. The level design is not very intuitive, and while I like the part where you're flying under the Eiffel Tower, I think that part's really cool. I'm not as well versed in French architecture and setting to really know if the rest of it even feels all that France. It kind of feels like a pretty basic track with the level design of a kind of complicated track, and it just kind of meshes in a way that I don't love. It's obviously not a level that I hate, we're past that stage, but this is not a track that I'm going out of my way to return to very often. Coming in at number 74 is Mario Circuit GBA. This is a pretty basic track, but it does do a couple of things to set itself apart from being like a boring slog to play through. Between the anti-gravity segments, the turns at the bottom, the oil spills you gotta avoid, and the fact that it's not that long of a track, I feel like I have a pretty good experience on this track pretty consistently. It's still pretty basic, so I can't put it too high, but I don't really have too many issues to point out about this track. Coming in at number 73 is going to be Mario Circuit 3 SNES, and this one is baked in with a little bit of nostalgia because Super Mario Kart is one of the earliest video game memories that I do have, so all of the colored blocks is really nostalgic to me. This one is completely flat the whole way, but there are plenty of turns, and it's fairly easy to get yourself going pretty fast. There's an easy little mushroom shortcut that you can take, some oil spills to avoid, a boost at the end. It's got a little bit of everything while still being fairly simple. I don't really have any reason to dislike this track, but because it is pretty basic, it is going to end up lower on the list here. Coming in at number 72 is going to be Riverside Park, and this is another pretty basic track. There's not a lot to it. I do like the darker skybox and the way that it feels like you're racing at evening around a sunset time. And I like how you end the laps by going through a waterfall. I think that is pretty cool. The one downside that I do have is I don't really like the piranha plant things in the road. Sometimes they can be inconvenient and just at the wrong spot at the wrong time. But this track doesn't really take that long to get through, so any bad times that I might have with this track don't really last that long. Coming in at number 71 is going to be Berlin Byways, and the knocks against this track are that there are cars on the road and that there's not that many different visual things that are like visually distinct for this track for me. I'm also not very well versed in German architecture, so I don't even know fully what all is being referenced and whatnot, but it's not a bad track to race through by any means, and there is a fun little section where you can drive through the little subway train, so that's cute, as well as having the arrows in the colors of the German flag. I think is a neat touch as well, but overall this track doesn't really excite me, so I didn't want to put it too much higher on the list. Coming in at number 70 is going to be Water Park, and this is a pretty inoffensive track. I don't really have too many issues with it other than the fact that I feel like it could be giving a little bit more water park. I mean, you go through water and above water and like there's like a Ferris wheel, but I don't know, I just haven't really been to a lot of water parks that really look like this. I feel like they could have done a little bit more, but it's a pretty short track, pretty basic. I don't have too many issues with it, but it doesn't really have that standout thing to, really set it apart from a lot of the other basic tracks as well. Coming in at number 69 is going to be Mario Kart Stadium. And at the risk of contradicting myself because maybe I forgot one higher up, this is peak basic track design. The actual racing doesn't really have a lot to it. It's just meant to introduce you to the game, and it's very basic in that sense, but the vibe and the atmosphere are incredible. You are in a stadium performing for all of your fans. They've got the screens, they got the crowds, they got the nighttime lighting. Everything just looks fantastic. Obviously, you can't go that high because there isn't that much more to it, but in terms of just taking a basic track that is supposed to be used to introduce a new player to the game, this is the peak, and it really just has everything that you could ask for the first track in the game. Coming in at number 68 is going to be Baby Park, which is just pure, unfiltered chaos in its truest form. You don't race on this track to show off your skills, you race on this track because you just want to live a little. How far are you ahead? How far are you behind? Nobody knows. Just keep going in circles and hope for the best, dodge as many items as you can, throw out a bunch of stuff, and just hope that things work out your way. That is Baby Park in a nutshell, baby. Coming in at number 67 is going to be Daisy Circuit, and I'll be honest, the ranking here is mostly because I haven't played this track a ton. I love the way this level looks and just like the coloring on it. The actual track design I don't really have any problems with. It is pretty fun. It's not super samey, but there's not really a lot of uniqueness either. We're kind of at the part of the list where if I don't really have any strong feelings, positive or negative, they're just going to kind of end up around here because very shortly I'm soon going to have a lot of only positive things to say. Coming in at number 66 is going to be Sky High Sundae. This track is essentially just a big oval, but it is filled with a bunch of ice creams and sweets and other snacks, and there's a lot of them that you can ramp off of and trick off of. It has this sort of floatiness to it that I kind of enjoy. This one's always been kind of inoffensive to me. I think it's pretty neat, and I don't mind racing on it most of the time. Coming in at number 65 is going to be Waluigi Stadium. This is another stadium track that has the crowd, the nighttime lighting, the whole 9 yards, and I really like the design of the track as well. The only thing that I kind of would say would hold this back is the really high walls and ramps, and the entire track is like way wider than I feel like it needs to be. Seems a bit excessive in my opinion. It also doesn't really have like that one standout moment in my mind, but it's a pretty fun track overall, and I like it. Coming in at number 64 is going to be DK Jungle, and I really do like the jungle setting. There's a lot of nice turns. You've got a section where there's some obstacles in the forms of like enemies or whatever those creatures are in the way, which is fine. Going inside the temple I think is really cool with a little banana centerpiece. You get to glide out of it right, to the corner that then takes you to the finish line. I don't really have anything bad to say about this track. I don't know that I've ever had like my fondest memories racing on this track, but I haven't had a lot of like bad times on it either. I think the design is nice. I think racing on it is fun, and it's what you want out of a Mario Kart track, honestly. It just doesn't quite have that extra special pizzazz to really put it higher on the list. Coming in at number 63 is going to be Tokyo Blur. This is a pretty inoffensive city track, as I think it looks pretty nice. I like the design of the background. I think the red roads look pretty neat. Each lap is unique, and I think all of them are perfectly fine. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't have a bunch of cars in the road, just a couple of thwomps. Honestly, just a pretty solid track overall. At 62 is London Loop, which I have a lot of similar things to say about as Tokyo Blur. I think that the buildings in the background and the skybox look really, really nice. The presentation is fantastic. I do think navigating this track is a little bit more confusing. There's a little bit more to it, and sometimes I'll be preparing for a left turn when I'm supposed to be going right and whatnot. So that can still catch me off guard. That's a little bit of a skill issue on my end. This is mostly driving on a roadway with not a lot of change of scenery. There is a little bit here and there, like when you go through the park or on the little boardwalk thing at the end. That might not even be the right term for it, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Either way, I don't really have a lot of bad things to say about this track. I think it's pretty solid overall, and that's what lands it at this spot on the list. Coming in at number 61 is going to be Mario Circuit DS, and I guess with the name Mario Circuit, that would make this peak basic track design, but this does a lot of things to sort of disguise it from just being like another basic Mario Circuit track, because of the obstacles in the road in terms of the piranha plants shooting fire at you. There's the piranha plants right on the side of the road. There's a lot of turns, there's changes of elevation, there's a whole little section going through some trees. It does a lot of things to disguise itself from just a normal basic Mario Kart track, and disguise itself in a way to be a little bit more exciting, and I like that. Coming in at number 60 is Twisted Mansion, which really lives up to its name, as you're going to be racing sideways, upside down, and all around. It's a crazy time in this Twisted Mansion. The design of the background and the mansion itself is absolute peak. It is fantastic looking, but the actual racing itself is just fine. There's a lot of turns that are just kind of wide, a lot of straightaways. You know, nothing too exciting, but I do like it overall. Coming in at number 59 is going to be New York Minute. I am a sucker for the nighttime skybox, apparently, because there's not a lot that's super special about this track, but I do just really like the way that it looks. You kind of alternate between going into the city and going around in the park, and I think both sections are fine. The cars that are in the road are stationary, which is great because I love not getting hit by cars. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's a fairly simple track, but the vibes are pretty good with this one, so I do like it, and that is what's going to land it here on the list. Coming in at 58 is Moo Moo Meadows. This track is just a vibe and so adorable. I mean, who doesn't love all of the cows all over the place? Despite the fact that the track basically looks like it's going around in a circle, there's enough variety to make it feel like it's not quite that simple, as, you know, there are some swaying turns back and forth that you need to do to avoid going into the grass. You've got the boost ramps, you've got the little mole things that you can boost off of as well. You're always just able to keep a pretty good sense of speed. It's not that long of a track. I think it's simple, but it really nails everything that it needs to. It is still a bit on the simpler side, and there's a lot of other tracks that I prefer just slightly more, but this is still a good one, and that is what lands it here on the list. Coming in at number 57 is going to be Piranha Plant Cove, and this is mostly a product of me not really racing on this track all that much. This one also has a nighttime skybox, and there's also a lot of underwater things going on. I really like the design of all the sections of the track, and it is really fun to race on. I never really took the time to learn all the ins and outs of this track, but I really liked what I did play. Every lap is unique and has a lot of interesting things going on, whether it's transitioning from above water to underwater or vice versa, whether it's the various turns or obstacles in the way. I just think that this was a really good track, and I think over time, if I continue to play more Mario Kart 8, this could rise up a bit, but we've already reached the part of the list where every track I talk about is really, really good. Coming in at number 56 is Sunshine Airport, and this is also just a vibe. I really like the atmosphere and the way that it just really feels like you're racing around an airport. I think the first half is really fun as it's a little bit more narrow and cluttered, and you know, you can get the item boxes, you can sort of boost on the various ramps and things. There are planes that you can go under, one that you can go through. It just feels very lively, and then you get to boost up over a giant gap up in the air, and then, you know, do some fun boosting as you turn right back around and then fly down and fly right over a plane, which is really cool. The vibes are really good here. The track is really short, not too much to complain about. There's just others that I like more. At number 55 is the Wii version of Rainbow Road. I really like this one. It checks a lot of boxes for me. It looks great, feels really good. There's parts of the track that do that wavy effect that lets you boost off of the ground. There's a lot of boost panels and the star things. And there's a cool ramp towards the end that turns you around and just visually looks really nice. Honestly, sometimes there's so much going on that it actually makes me a little bit sick, but I think this is a really high quality track overall. But at this point, I think I've sort of lost my special attachment to Rainbow Road being this extra special thing. And at this point, just having the same exact setting as like 5 other tracks in the game is a little, you know, repetitive, I guess. But yeah, still really good track overall. Coming in at 54 is Royal Raceway. This one is pretty simple and straightforward. There's not really a lot of shortcuts, but the turns in this track are really fun to do. I always find the sense of speed fun, and it's enough of a challenge to sort of keep you on your toes and not be like mind-numbingly boring or anything. The aesthetic and colors are nice. It's giving very like Cherry Blossom Festival vibes. And yeah, there's not really a lot to say about this track. It's just fun to race on, and that's as simple as it is. Coming in at number 53 is Grumble Volcano. This track is really cool as you are racing around a volcano as the track is literally falling apart, which I absolutely love. The feeling of the track falling apart is captured perfectly. I think the only thing that keeps it a little bit lower is because sometimes it can almost feel like there's too many things going on, especially on that final lap. It can get a little bit chaotic, especially if there's a lot of items and stuff flying around all over the place. I find that it can be somewhat easy to get Mario Karted in this game where you're just getting pummeled by like way too many things between items and track obstacles at the same time. Not that it happens all that often, but it is like a higher chance on this one compared to some other tracks. But overall, I'd say this is a pretty good track. At 52, I have Amsterdam Drift. This is a pretty fun city track that has 3 unique feeling laps. They all kind of have their own vibes going for them that are different from each other, which I think is cool. I think all of the underwater sections, as well as the windmill section and the Field of Flowers, really sets it apart from other city tracks to make it not feel quite as samey. If I had to say one reason as to why it isn't even higher on the list, I would just say that outside of when you're transitioning from land to water and vice versa, it's a pretty flat racing track. Not a ton of like ramps or other exciting maneuvers. You know, the turns are fine, but nothing too crazy or anything. But yeah, the vibes for this one are good. It is a very good track. There's just others that are better. At 51 is Boo Lake. I do like this track. It is fairly simple and pretty short, but I've always liked anything designed with like Boo in mind. All of the like ghostly aesthetics and stuff is all really good. Again, this is a fairly short track, so you're not going to be on it all that long. Driving underwater is neat, and you've got some ramps and things to, you know, jump off of. It's, you know, all fun and stuff. Nothing too crazy or complicated, but they don't all need to be. Starting off the top 50 is Tick-Tock Clock, and who doesn't love driving around inside of a giant clock or on a track that has a lot of clock mechanisms or whatever the entire theme is supposed to be. Obviously, there's a lot of clock stuff, a lot of watch time stuff, arrow hands, all this sort of things. And yeah, the aesthetic is cool. It's a lot of fun. I, for some reason, used to not really like this track all that much, but I feel like the more I race on it, the more I do enjoy it. I think the only reason that it doesn't go any higher is there's not like a ton of room for, you know, really satisfying boosts. There's a couple sections that are a little bit more straightaway heavy. And, I mean, the clock aesthetic is very cool. I do like it, but there are, I guess, some other themes and stuff that I like a little bit more. But this one is a classic, and I really do enjoy it. We are in the top 50, almost in the top half, so we are really, really getting onto some stacked tracks here. Coming in at number 49 is Daisy Cruiser, and I love driving around on this boat. It's a theme that was pulled off really well, and even though it is about driving on a boat, there is still room to have some variety, as it does have underwater sections, as well as the outside of the boat, the inside of the boat, going through the dining room while the tables are sliding left and right is fantastic. This is another one where it's not like there's really any complicated like racing maneuvers. Maybe that would help it go up a little bit more. I also haven't raced on this track a ton, but every time I have, it has been fun. There's some sections in some of the turns that feel a little bit narrower, which give the illusion of needing more skill than other tracks to pull off. But outside of that, you know, it's a pretty straightforward track, but it is one I do enjoy. Starting off the top half of the list at number 48 is Excite Bike Arena. Who does not love ramps? I sure do, and if you do, then you would like Excite Bike Arena as well, because that's all there is. It's boost pads and ramps. It's not like there's anything complicated going on here. You are driving straight, you are jumping off of ramps, you are getting boosts, you are going fast, and you are taking a right turn every so often. The theme is pulled off really well, obviously based on the Excite Bike game, and it's always a fun time racing on this track. Coming in at 47 is Dry Dry Desert, and I do love a good desert theme, and especially a good Egyptian theme with the pyramids and the sphinxes and whatnot. There's just enough variety with the turns to feel fun and exciting as you're racing on it, as well as the giant sinkhole in the middle, and then a water section at the end that you can jump off of ramps or use the boost from the little spots in the water that give you, lift you up and give you air. I have no idea what that would even be called. But it's a short track that manages to fit in a decent amount of variety and is just fun overall and has a great aesthetic, and I love it a lot, and that is what lands it here. At number 46 is the best stadium in the game. It is Wario Stadium. This one actually feels more narrow than most tracks, and it can feel a little congested with the other racers, but I think it is really fun to race on. I do like the stadium aesthetic with the crowds, and the sort of dirt bike looking arena I think is very cool. They managed to squeeze in some variety on this one as well, between jumping through fire hoops and going up the wall sideways and then going underwater at the end of the lap. This track never fails to give me that sense of speed that I enjoy, so it is one that I treasure fondly. Coming in at number 45 is Rainbow Road, the SNES version, and this is why this list is mostly skewed toward 200cc, because on lower speeds, this track is honestly a little boring as it's just a flat piece of track that you go around. But trying to take these sharp turns on 200cc adds another layer of strategy that I enjoy a lot. The fact that you can take the middle ramp thing without needing a mushroom boost is very nice. You have to be quick thinking about maneuvering around the thwomps and which side of the thwomps that you want to go to. It just never fails to deliver a good time. I do have a little bit of nostalgia for the Super Nintendo tracks, which I'm sure helps as well, but I really do just have a fun time trying to race on this track, specifically on 200cc, and that's what's going to land it up here on the list. At number 44 is Yoshi's Circuit. This track has grown on me over time, and I really like it now. Obviously, the track is in the shape of Yoshi, which is incredible. There's a lot of turns going back and forth, so you are constantly being kept on your toes as to which way you need to be facing, and trying to get the right amount of drift and the right amount of boost at the right time is very engaging, and it makes for a very fun time. There's obviously the fun waterfall shortcut if you can manage that properly, which I almost never can, but it is what it is. I should get better. But even if I never do, I will always have a fun time racing on Yoshi Circuit. Coming in at number 43 is Sunset Wilds, and I know that this track doesn't really do anything all that special. It is a pretty basic track, but I am a sucker for a nice sunset skybox, as well as all the Shy Guys on the track as well. It's a fairly short track, but does have some jumps and turns and boosts and all that sort of fun stuff that comes with a good Mario Kart track. I also haven't raced on this one a ton, so maybe if this got like really old and boring, it could go down my list over time, but I really do enjoy how simple and straightforward this track is, as well as just the way that it looks. At number 42 is Sweet Sweet Canyon. The theming for this one with sweets everywhere is just incredible, and the more that you look for, the more you will find. It's also not a bad racetrack to actually race on. It is fairly short, so it's not going to last you that long. But in that short time, they managed to cram in a giant boost across a giant gap, an underwater section, a split path, the ending part where, you know, you have like the 3 different turns. You can also go through the donut hole for a little shortcut. So, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in the short time that this track is around for. I like the theming, and I think it's just pretty fun overall. Coming in at number 41 is the best Rainbow Road in the game. It is the Rainbow Road 3DS version. This track is just straight up really fun to race on. It has so many different elements, and you're not stuck doing the same thing for very long. You get to ride around on a planet's rings, you get to spend some time on a moon. You're constantly twisting and turning and boosting and jumping, and it really just has everything that you could want out of a good Mario Kart track. I'm honestly feeling like I should have put it higher. I'm not even sure how we're only at number 41 when I really have nothing negative to say about this track, but here we are. Coming in at number 40 is Neo Bowser City. If you haven't figured it out by now, some of the things that make a good track for me are a good aesthetic and a lot of fun turns. And specifically, I mean turns that you can get a really good boost on, but also turns that require a little bit of skill to be able to navigate, and especially if you get like turns back to back. And this one does do that pretty well. I will say this is probably the only track in the game that I do actually prefer at 150cc, because some of these turns on 200cc are a little bit too brutal for me. But at the same time, visually, this might be my favorite looking track in the entire game. So the high highs balance with the low lows and land it at around this spot on the list. Coming in at number 39 is Singapore Speedway. And what can I say, but this track looks beautiful. The skybox is one of my favorites in the entire game, and just the colors emanating from the city are fantastic. It might sound really silly to boil down the reason why I like this track just being the fact that it looks really good, but I'm a simple man, and sometimes when color look pretty, like what do you want me to say? But this is also a pretty fun track to race on. Because it is a city track, it does have 3 unique laps, and they all feel perfectly fine and good. There's a couple of big jumps across gaps, and the one over the geyser is maybe one of the most picturesque views in the entire game. I think the intent of the city tracks are to show off some like foreign architecture and give you like a place to explore, and for the most part, that's not really why I care about any of the city tracks, but I feel like for this one, I actually actively really like looking around the background and like exploring like around the city, essentially. So for that, I do have to give it props. Coming in at number 38 is Bowser Castle. If I had to pick a theme for this track, it would just be all about choices and planning the routes that you have to take on the fly, as there's a lot of obstacles in the way, including the fire wheel, the spike ball, the giant stone Bowser that's punching the racetrack. It really just gives off a menacing feel. You gotta think quick on your feet, and I kind of love that for the theming of Bowser Castle. Also, the entrance to the castle looks immaculate. It is incredible. So I would say that I definitely enjoy this track a lot. Coming in at number 37 is DK Mountain. I love getting shot out of a cannon at the volcano. I think that is incredible. And then you just go to the top of the mountain, and then you start turning and swerving and zigging and zagging all the way down the mountain. Especially at the top, I think this track is probably a little bit too wide for its own good, but I don't really think it's that big of a detractor. This is a straightforward, simple concept that is executed beautifully. I also love the wavy bridge at the end of each lap. I think that's a pretty cute touch as well. But overall, I don't have too many complaints, and I really like this track. Coming in at number 36 is Mario Circuit. I don't remember what verbiage I used to say about circuit tracks or simple tracks or whatever, but Mario Circuit is really high, and I might have forgotten about that. But I don't really think this is like that simple of a track, at least not visually, because you're being flipped upside down and driving on a couple different types of terrain. The thing that I really like about this track is hitting that boost ramp at the end of each lap. I think like the way that you go flying and then you kind of get uprighted and whatnot, I don't know, something about that visually like pleases me, and I don't know, I just feel like a childlike wonder when I get to experience that moment again and again. A track doesn't need to do anything fancy to just be straight up fun to race on, and this track is just straight up fun to race on. Coming in at 35 is Madrid Drive. I'm not really sure if I can pinpoint what exactly Madrid Drive does differently than some of the other city tracks that I've already mentioned, but I do like the variety of this one, between the roadways, the not so roadways, the dirt pathways, the football field. I do just really like the variety that this track has to offer. Also, Madrid is like actually a city that I've been to before, which is super cool. I don't really remember it looking like that. There weren't as many thwomps and goombas in the road that I can remember, but I just thought that was a fun little factoid. But this track has everything I want, you know, turns, boosts, jumps, obstacles, but not annoying ones. It's got everything. But there are still more that I like better. Like my number 34, Los Angeles Laps. You get a fun beach vibe to start. There's a Ferris wheel, which I think is cool. Honestly, the reason that I like this one so much is there's a lot of different sections where there are alternating turns where you have to, you know, go right, then left, and right. And I feel like chaining turns together like that is generally a lot of fun. And who could forget the famous Los Angeles oil rig section, because everyone knows that they do a lot of oil rigging in Los Angeles. I don't really get that one, but honestly, it's still a pretty fun racetrack, so I don't really care about the lack of realism on that one too much. Or maybe it is realistic and I'm the uneducated one, who knows? But either way, this has a lot of things that I like in a track, such as all of the turns, a good amount of variety, and just the way it looks, and the coloring of it is also very pleasing to look at. Just not a lot to complain about overall. Coming in at number 33 is Animal Crossing, and I'm not even like a huge Animal Crossing fan, but I do appreciate all of the theming for this one. I think it's really neat, and the fact that there are 4 different seasons that you can race on as well. Even though it doesn't change the layout of the track, it does change the aesthetics, which is a pretty cool idea that got executed pretty well. This is just a track that I've raced on a lot, and I have had fun almost every single time that I've raced on it, so it really just comes down to something as simple as that. There's not a lot of complicated maneuvers, but there's a couple of, you know, fun turns and some boosts you can go over, and sometimes you can get boosts from like the apples that fall from the trees. There's like 1 or 2 turns that you can take pretty sharp and, you know, use a couple of those with like mushrooms for like a little mushroom shortcut. I don't know, it's just really a fun track overall that I enjoy. Coming in at number 32 is Calamari Desert, and you know me, I love a good desert theme. I also love trains. I really am a simple creature, but this one also has a couple of fun ramps, so that's cool. I also do like going through the tunnel that the train goes through. I think that's a lot of fun. There's just a lot of interactions with the train, which is very cool, as well as mixed with the desert aesthetic, which I really like. Did you like how I was able to say the same thing twice in different ways to make this section just a little bit longer? Because I don't have much more to say. I just like the simple things in life. And those things include racing on a fun track like Calamari Desert. At number 31 is Snowland, and Snowland is exactly like Calamari Desert, but instead of a desert, it's ice, and instead of a train, there's penguins. So they're not actually the same at all. But I do like a good winter aesthetic when it is pulled off well, and this track also has a lot of fun turns, even though there's not like a lot of them. I think the turns on this one are fun, as well as there's a couple of neat shortcuts that you can take as well. This is another track that I've just never had a bad time on, so for that, this has to rank highly for me. At number 30 is Peach Gardens. This track looks fantastic and plays fantastically. I like the turns on this one a lot, as well as just the size of the garden. Like the roads are so wide, but you really just get that sense that you're exploring this like giant garden. There's a decent amount of variety with just the different turns, as well as you can use like the Monty Mole's things as little extra jumps. The final lap where you go backwards through the garden I think is a really neat gimmick, and I just find this to be a very enjoyable time. Coming in at number 29 is Shy Guy Falls, and this is a track that has grown on me a lot over time, as it doesn't really have a lot of different turns for you to do, as there's a few straightaway sections, but some of those straightaway sections are boosting up a waterfall and then riding down a waterfall, which I think is pretty cool. And then after you come down the waterfall, I like that there's two different sets of branching pathways that you can take, so there's a lot of options and thinking on the fly, depending on the angles that you're taking, the items that you have, and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's really fun. I also just love Shy Guys, so, you know, having a bunch of them in the background is also very nice. So it has definitely become one of my favorites in the game. Coming in at number 28 is going to be Athens Dash, and this track really sets itself apart from other city tracks, just in the sense that there really is no paved city like roadways that there are on a lot of the other tracks. You're essentially racing through a bunch of like ancient Greek architecture, which is really cool. There's just a lot of stuff going on at every turn. There's so much stuff in the background, in the foreground, obstacles in the road, columns you have to go around, various jumps off of boost pads that you do. There's just a lot to this level, but because it just looks so different from all the other city tracks, that easily makes it more like recognizable and identifiable, and it makes it stand out in my mind. And obviously, of course, it is a lot of fun to race on. Coming in at number 27 is going to be Bangkok Rush, and I really am a sucker for a sunset skybox. I just love the vibes that this track has. There's a lot of neat little sections in this one, including the start with the boats on the waterways and the markets. There's a spot on the second lap where you like fly through like an arch. You have the parking garage at the end, which also then you jump out of to like jump on all these tents and whatnot. I don't know, all of them just kind of connect together to be a really fun track. And it's really boosted by the aesthetic as well. I don't know a single thing about Thailand and how realistic any of this is and how much of it is representative of the area. All I know is that when it is turned into a Mario Kart track, it is fun. At number 26 is going to be Coconut Mall, and it's Coconut Mall. Like, what more do I need to say? Everybody knows Coconut Mall. It is a favorite for a reason, as it is very fun to race on. Who doesn't love driving through a giant shopping mall, going up and down the escalators or ramps or whatever, exiting by flying back down onto the roadways just to be met by a bunch of Shy Guys trying to hit you with their car. So yeah, what's not to like? I had to have it high on this list. Coming in at number 25 is going to be Yoshi Valley. While I would love to give this track props for giving you multiple routes to choose between, let's be honest, you're going to be using the same route every single time that you race on this track, but that doesn't take away from the fact that that one route is really fun. I also just like the aesthetics of this level. It doesn't take that long. It mixes in a few back and forth turns at the end. There's also a giant Yoshi egg in the way and a nice little ramp shortcut if you've got a mushroom to use it at the end. There's just a lot of little things about this level that just really click for me, and I always have a fun time racing on it. Coming in at number 24 is going to be Hyrule Circuit. The design of this track is immaculate when you take into account all of the little Legend of Zelda things that are scattered throughout, collecting rupees instead of coins, the castle. It all just looks very, very nice. Racing on it is also a lot of fun. There's a few sections, you know, with alternating turns that I like to do. You have inside the castle with the unlockable ramp to ramp through the middle, which I think is fun. There's a few different spots for you to shortcut through if you've got enough speed or a mushroom. This is a track that just really does all the little things right and comes together to make a very, very fun track to race on. Coming in at number 23 is going to be Sky Garden, which is a track that I don't really hear a lot of people talk highly about. But I've always had a fun time on this track, and I do like the way that this track looks and how you're just kind of racing up in the clouds. And whether you're bouncing on the leaves or the mushroom, this is a pretty solid track for people who like bouncing, such as myself. Going through the little shortcut with the arch at the end can be very satisfying. Something about just going through something is also just, I don't know, really satisfying, I guess. This is just a really simple track that doesn't really do anything complicated, but it didn't really need to. I just always have a fun time racing on it. Coming in at number 22 is going to be Merry Mountain, and the theming for this one is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, as boy do I love Christmas. Just experiencing all the Christmasness that this track has to offer really just brings a smile to my face. And I will say going up the mountain is pretty fun. There's a lot of alternating turns. You are kind of following the train pulling a sleigh, at least on the first lap. And even though coming down the mountain is literally just like a big straightaway with not much going on except for maybe a boost or two, it's not enough to drag it down so low because the rest of it just works so well for me that I can't help but just love this track. Coming in at number 21 is going to be Dragon Driftway, and with the amount of times that I've mentioned enjoying twisting and turning, this should not come as a surprise. I also really like dragons, so the aesthetic here is one of my favorites for sure. I think the only reason that this isn't even higher is I think this used to be a little bit of like a Neo Bowser City situation where some of the turns were really hard and I struggled with it a lot. And even though that has gotten way better over time, I think there's like a little part of that negativity that still continues to linger. There's also not a ton of different variety on this track. It really is just a lot of twists and turns. So I guess if you're looking for extra like jumps and boosts and other crazy things, this doesn't really have it. But what it does have, it's just really fantastic at. Coming in at number 20 is going to be Dolphin Shoals, and this is a track that has always brought me a lot of joy. From starting off by using ramps to go through these hoops to then going underwater and being propelled by jet streams or whatnot and being able to trick on the back of the eel like over and over to get a lot of speed, I think is a lot of fun. You end off each lap with this one really big turn, then you can fly over like this whirlpool just to dive back into the water and do it all over again. There's really no section of this track that isn't fun for me. It's a very good underwater track and makes good use of the things that you can do under the water, like all the interactions with the fish. So for that, I had to have this high up on the list. Coming in at number 19 is going to be Choco Mountain. This one is fairly simple, but I've always had a fun time racing on it. I think it has just the right amount of stuff to it to make it really fun, whether it's flying over a big gap or dodging falling rocks while you're ascending the mountain or the big ramps at the end or just enough turns to make it fun. It's not a super long track, and I think all of it mixes together to make a really good end result. Coming in at number 18 is going to be Waluigi Pinball, and this is just the essence of pure fun. This track is so colorful, and I love it a lot. Obviously, you're basically playing inside like a giant pinball machine, but it also has a lot of twists and turns along the way before you even get to the pinball section. The colors, the non-stop turns back and forth until you get to the pinball section, and then you're dodging obstacles and dodging pinballs and all this crazy stuff flying around. I think it's so much fun just to get a brief reset once you're past the gauntlet, cross the finish line, and then do it all over again as you get launched up to the top, and it is just so much fun. I think this is a fantastic track, and I enjoy it a lot. Coming in at number 17 is going to be Toad Harbor, and I've had a high opinion of this track for a really long time. This track has multiple split paths along the way, giving you numerous different ways to tackle the track. There's sections that are very open and wide, and then there's others that are very narrow. The variety and fun factor are just off the charts, and navigating all of the different paths and turns makes it feel very skillful to be able to pull off. It's a track that I've just had a lot of fun competitive races on, and I can't ask for much more than that. Coming in at number 16 is going to be Bowser Castle 3. I really like a good fire and lava aesthetic, and I really like a good Bowser Castle, and this one really just knocks everything out of the park. I think a lot of the changes to this track were very good. There's a lot of ramps for you to get a lot of speed. Elevating and banking the turnarounds was a fantastic idea, and it really just makes the whole track feel very smooth and fluid to race on. I still don't think I've successfully navigated those like really thin like ramps towards the end of the track yet, but when I'm not trying to go for that, I feel like I can just zoom and fly through this track in such a fun way. The aesthetics are great, the racing is great, what more can you ask for? At number 15 is going to be Maple Treeway, and you want good aesthetics, this track is giving you good aesthetics, and it's also giving you a really fun track to race on. There's a lot of twists and turns and large gaps to get boosted across over. Chaining together all the twists and turns just feels fantastic, and I really enjoy it a lot. This is a classic for a reason. I have nothing but praises to say for this track. Coming in at number 14 is going to be Squeaky Clean Sprint. This is a fairly simple concept that I just think is executed beautifully with all of the random things around the bathroom that you are racing in, as well as how those things are utilized like in the race course itself, whether it's like the towel textures that you're racing on, racing like in the sink, in the tub, through the drains, the sponges around the side. The more you just look at like the background and things that are part of the racetrack, the more you see. It's also just a fun track to race on. Like I said, it's got some good underwater sections, lots of ramps, and some nice turns at the end, and yeah, it all just works well together to make a really fun track. Coming in at number 13 is going to be Mute City. I've always been a fan of the vibes of F-Zero and the aesthetics, even if I haven't played that many of the games myself. But I think they're replicated well here, especially in terms of the speed that you can get on this course with all of the boosts throughout the entire track. This one is also just so crazy twisty-turny. You have no idea whether you're right side up or upside down at any given moment. It's a little mind-boggling. But overall, I think it's a lot of fun. You can get a lot of speed with all of the boosts on this track and twist all around to your heart's content. What is not to love? At number 12 is going to be Ninja Hideaway. This track is crazy. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and that is a good thing. There are multiple different paths that you can take at different sections of the track. You got a giant gap to boost across. You got plenty of turns, plenty of ramps, plenty of ways to get speed. The colors and aesthetic for this track go kind of crazy as well. I'm just a big fan of tracks that have multiple options for you to take advantage of, and I think this racetrack was executed really, really well. Coming in at number 11 is going to be Vancouver Velocity. I'm sure most people would be done ranking city tracks by this point in the list, but I've still got more to go because I just find this one a lot of fun. I really like a good, well-executed winter aesthetic, even if it doesn't really have much gameplay ramifications. Just like the snow falling is a really neat touch. All of the bridges and the turns that you make on them in the first lap are fantastic. There's obviously the spots where you go through the hockey arenas. There's a nice strolling through the park in the second lap that I think is really nice, and even though the final lap is probably the weakest of the three, I still think that overall as a package this track is just fantastic. I have a lot of fun racing on it, and I really like the aesthetics, the winterness of it, and going through the hockey arena is obviously a big highlight as well. When I boil it down to just how much fun am I having on a certain racetrack, this one, it ranks really high. And starting off the top 10, we've got yet another city track, as this one is going to be Rome Avanti. This track really just has everything that I like, including a dark skybox, really cool atmosphere, really awesome Roman architecture, and a lot of twists and turns along the way. There's never a part of this track that seems boring or annoying or anything like that. There's a decent amount of variety here, but it mostly just comes down to how fun it is to race on and all of the time that you're spent twisting and turning all different ways in a very fun manner. I think the third lap specifically has a couple of really cool moments, like the chain chomps coming to like bite you like while you're going through the road, as well as the rings that you can like fly through towards the end of the track. But yeah, all of that and more is why I really like this track, and there's still one more city track to go, but we're not quite there yet. Because first we need to talk about my number 9, which is going to be Cloud Top Cruise. This one is a classic. In the same way that I like riding on the clouds in Sky Garden, this one just does it even better with the cloud aesthetic that you're literally on top of it, as well as having some bounce pads, some nice turns, some nice little shortcuts. Obviously the transition into going into these like dark stormy clouds, you have the boost pad section where there's a little bit of risk reward, as you know, if you are not paying attention you could get struck by lightning trying to go over a certain boost panel if you're going over the wrong one. It's not really that long of a race, but every single part of it is really fun. I think it looks fantastic, and it just rides fantastic, and I've never had a bad time on this racetrack, and that is why I had to have it so high on the list. But here we are, my favorite city track in the game, and number 8 overall on this list is Sydney Sprint. At the time that this track came out, I do believe that this was the least city-like feeling track that had been released at that point, but even since then, this is still one of my all-time favorites to race on. This one actually feels like one of the longer tracks in the game, and each lap I feel is better than the last, which is really good when racing on it, knowing that just as you're racing, it just gets better and better and better. I do like the aesthetics of a lot of the different set pieces and backgrounds. I like the carnival rides that you see, and the bridge, especially, you know, on the first lap you go across the bridge, that's whatever, and then on the final lap you kind of come across on that same bridge, going up a bunch of ramps, going through this cool like opera house thing, going by those same carnival rides again, but this time they're going faster. This to me just felt like a refreshing breath of fresh air at the time, and I think it has held up as just a really fun racetrack for me. It has everything that I'm looking for, a lot of alternating turns back and forth, a lot of different set pieces and stuff that you interact with, interesting things in the background as well. This really just knocks it all out of the park for me. It is a near perfect track. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Wild Woods, and this track is fantastic and has been one of my favorites for a very long time. I think in terms of aesthetics and going through the woods and the trees and whatnot, I think it is up there as one of my all-time favorite aesthetics. There's a few interesting parts of this level, including the first half where you're just going down the sort of wooded area part, and then you have the water slide section that I think is so much fun, and then you get to the bottom, and there's still another ramp for you to go a little bit further down with the choice of a shortcut or just going around the right side. And I just really think that the sense of speed is nearly unmatched, because this entire time you just feel like you're going like down the entire time. And that sense of speed just weaving through these wild woods is nearly unmatched in the entire game. It's a track that I've always had a fun time racing on and was always going to end up very high on this list. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Mushroom Gorge, and this one really just comes down to the fact that bouncing on mushrooms is fun. There's a couple spots that there are a couple of choices in terms of the path that you want to take, but I'm going to be honest, I basically just take the same path every single time. There is a couple fun shortcuts to try and attempt, but really, at the end of the day, bouncing on mushrooms is fun, trying to chain those bounces together is fun, and then trying to maintain control as you come out of the bounce and making sure that you don't lose control or start veering in like the wrong direction or whatever is all very satisfying. This is a classic and a well-beloved track for a reason, and I am one of the many that loves this track. Starting off the top 5 and coming in as the best DLC track in the entire game, it is Yoshi's Island. And I'm going to be honest, I just have a soft spot for Yoshi's Island, the game, and just the aesthetics of it, and I do think that it is nailed very well. This is a track that I'd like to spend even more time on, and there is potential for this to go even higher on the list. I just think that the ones above this I have been in love with for even longer. But the different sections that you go through and the different creatures and enemies that you see referenced in the background and in the foreground, honestly, are just really, really awesome. The coins being like the Yoshi coins from the game is really neat, as well as towards the end of the track where you can hit the little question mark cloud for like an extra ramp. I think that's all really cool and neat, and I just think that it does a lot of the things from Yoshi's Island and ties it into make a really fun Mario Kart track very fantastically. And it's also just fun to race on, just like the different turns and whatnot. You know, there's a lot of fun racing sections as well, but the aesthetic is really what puts it over the top for me. It has very quickly earned its spot among one of my all-time favorite tracks. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Thwomp Ruins, and I think this might be the most questionable choice that people are going to look at on my list, as I feel like I have left people scratching their heads when they try and figure out why I love this track so much, but I really cannot help it. I've loved this track for a very long time. I've always liked a good temple aesthetic and temple-like theme, and I think this is really, really well done. I do know that there are like a few straightaways, like there's not like a bunch of twists and turns that I like until the very end. There's a couple of fun shortcuts to do, and you can also like ride on the side of the wall, and when you boost like towards the finish line, I think that's pretty satisfying as well. While I do think this is the outlier in terms of the fact that it just doesn't have as many twists and turns that I generally like in some of my favorite tracks, the fact that I've just been holding on to my love of this track for a really long time has kind of just put it in like a special place in my heart for me. I mean, at this point, just count yourself lucky that this wasn't my number 1 track, but something about the thwomps and the ruins and temple aesthetic mixed together with how long I've just really liked this track. Even though it is pretty simple, it has a couple of fun sections, and for those reasons, I had to have this really, really high on my list. Now, I'm going to be honest, these last 3 tracks are all essentially tied for my number 1 spot, but I had to order them for the sake of this list, so at number 3, I begrudgingly have put Ribbon Road. Ribbon Road has one of my favorite aesthetics in the entire game, with the colorful track and the colorful backgrounds. All of the waves in the road give you plenty of opportunities to get a lot of boosts on this track, and there's even a lot of other ramps and fun turns in other sections of this track. You get to boost a car across an entire gap right at the end, and then take that little shortcut if you are able to. This really is just like a perfect mix of a fantastic theme, a fantastic looking track, really fun colors that pop, and a really fun track to race on. Just every single turn is satisfying, a bunch of ramps is satisfying. You can feel yourself just like flying through the track with a great sense of speed, with opportunities to boost off of the waves to get even more speed, and just a boost at the end. I don't know, something about all of these things combined together have always like really put this track in, into a special place in my heart. It's why it was so hard for me not to put this at my number one, but it's also going to be equally as hard for me not to put the next one as my number one. So let's go ahead and just talk about that one now, as that one is going to be Mount Wario. Mount Wario has always been one of my all-time favorites. I mean, you want to talk about a sense of speed. You are going down a mountain the entire time. You don't need to worry about going back up, because that's not what this is about. The 3 laps are just split into different sections while going down the mountain. There's a few fun shortcuts, but really just a lot of opportunities to fly in the air, get boosting, go fast, have a couple of quick turns, and even though sometimes I found myself getting stuck in the tree section because of just being really bad, overall I've always had a fun time on this track. So many finishes in this track have been like nail biters and really close finishes that has been really satisfying to race on. I of course have always loved a good track that has a lot of snow, with this really being themed after like skiing and whatnot. It really is pretty much a flawless track, but there was one that I could not possibly not rank at number one, and so we're going to go ahead and talk about that. My number one in the entire game is Big Blue. A lot of the points that I brought up in Mute City in terms of the F-Zero aesthetics and sense of speed will be restated here, but I just think that Big Blue does it even better. I think having 3 unique laps really helps instead of doing the same one over and over, and just how much of this track that you're just really going downhill and going fast, and there's a lot of turns and twists and whatnot. This really has every single thing that I'm looking for in a fun race course. Whether it's boosting across a large gap, whether it's alternating turns left and right, whether it's boosts allowing you to get a fantastic sense of speed, Big Blue literally has it all, and I cannot find a single complaint. I've never had a bad time on this racetrack, and to me it really is the epitome of peak Mario Kart track design. So there we have it, that's my list. I ranked all 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe just barely in time before Mario Kart World comes out. At least I hopefully got this video up before the game came out. If not, then disregard, I guess. But I would love to know some of your least favorite and favorite tracks in the game. If you think this is easy, trying to rank 96 different things in a proper order is really difficult, but I had so much fun doing it. I hope that this was an enjoyable watching experience for you guys as well. If so, please let me know, like the video, and subscribe. I've got more long rankings on the way. Hopefully they don't take me like 6 months to work on like this video did. But any support is greatly appreciated, even if it's a long comment saying about how trash this list was and how bad my opinions are. That is perfectly fine and valid. I am going to stop rambling and get out of here, so I hope you did enjoy. If so, let me know, but I will see you all around for a future video. Goodbye.